Shouts out to my guys over in Lyon, France, over at Dope. I appreciate you. I miss you guys. I'll be back this summer. All right, let's get to the review. What's up? Thanks for coming back through. This one is pretty exciting because two things can be true at once. One, this is an absolutely beautiful shoe, and it was a lot of fun to run in. Two, this shoe was unstable, and it's hard for me to get into more often. I'll explain as we go along. Today, we are talking about the ASICS METASPEED Sky Paris. The cool thing about this one is I got it on super sale. A somewhat unfair thing about this one is that I got it used. I found a good seller, reputable rating, 99% rating. However, this shoe had about 8 miles on it. Now, I don't know what kind of foot was in this shoe, but those 8 miles that they had on it seemed quite destructive. I'm going to speak to the material, the fit, the width, and then the foam itself. Right off top, it was super, super weird because as I placed my foot in this shoe to get going, the first thing, and I mean the very first thing it felt like to me, was this. It felt exactly like this. Now, I know there's some obvious differences, that being how wide one is in comparison. So the initial on-foot feel felt like that. Now, as I kept going, the overall feel felt more like this, the ADIOS Pro 3. That's my custom with my company logo on it. The profile on the bottom was very, very similar. Very, very similar. The ride felt very similar. There was a feeling of instability. So the initial cushioning definitely felt so similar. The setup and how the plate reacted to my pressure felt very, very similar to the Alpha Fly 2. However, the ride as I got moving felt a little more like the ADIOS Pro 3. So there were a couple different things going through my head. Let's talk about a few things. Upper, midsole, outsole, as we always do. And we're also going to talk about, just slightly, the difference between the edge and the sky. It's cleverly right on display for us. And it's an easy way to look and see which one you got and to identify what you need out of a plated shoe. So let's get into it. First off, love the colorway. Cannot beat the colorway. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. That's what drew me to it in the first place. In previous iterations of the Metaspeed line, I should say the Metaspeed line was split for this one in particular. They are now more similar than ever with a tweak to decide which fork you take. So the Metaspeed Sky and the Metaspeed Edge looked very different. There was almost a negative taper. As a former long jumper, Adidas used to have, they still do, their long jump shoes are negative taper, giving you a lift on the front as you roll through the foot to aid in that toe off. There's actually a lot of sprint shoes that use that same technology. So when people are like, oh, you shouldn't wear plated shoes, I'm like, anyone who's run track and worn spikes has worn a plated shoe. Let's hold tight on that a little bit. I'm not saying walk around and do a lot of leisure in them, but still, it's spikes with padding. The profile of the previous Metaspeed Sky was a little bit of that negative taper feel, but it didn't look like this. This looks a little more set to heel strike and roll you. We're talking about the upper, so let's get into that. Extremely breathable, super light, super airy mesh. I would even liken it to kind of like cellar mesh. Like there's nothing to it. They've got a few structural components in protecting the big toe, little bit of a mud guard built in, as much as you can have with a very light material, and that goes all the way around the shoe. So super airy. However, again, not having a brand new pair, having a pair that had 8 or so miles put on them, there is a lot of that material. And when it starts to stretch or have some kind of pressure put on it, it didn't quite feel the same. There was too much room. I like a little bit of a snug fit. That didn't provide that here. Now again, I know it's unfair of me to say that about this shoe without me having a fresh pair, but I just found that there was quite a bit of room in that toe to get that bunching on that material. And it's a material that is not knit. It's not going to come back to form. It's stretched out. Did not like that. Wish that it could have been me in that shoe initially to maybe feel what that feels like. Again, in the comments, let me know if you all have had a different experience with that. The laces, again, I talked about the similarities and that initial feel. These are the same laces. They're the exact same laces in the Alpha Fly. I love that little serrated edge of that knit material on those. Grips along the eyelets and gives you a very snug tie down. Love that. The tongue, again, it's not as paper thin as the Adios Pro 3 and some of the other tongues, but it's along those lines of the wet bacon. And it does move a bit. It tends to wander. Now the strange thing is, most always if I have a tongue that's not gusseted, it tends to slip to the outside. I'm not sure what kind of astrophysics this tongue has, but it tended to move inward. I just don't understand not gusseting the tongue of a racer. You don't want it to move. You want it to stay snug. You want it to stay in place over the top. And these little lace keepers that keep the tongue in, they do not prevent side-to-side motion. I don't know why this old technology is always being put to use when it would be good if you would just lock the tongue down. Just lock it down. It's not that big a deal. The padding around the upper goes all the way around on the outside there to the external part of the shoe to prevent rubbing. I did get these a slight bit big, but had I known that it would stretch out with use like this, I probably would have gotten my true to size. I often go up half a size to a full size on plated shoes so that it hits the ball of my foot just right. That's just something that I've found, and I would advise anyone getting plated shoes, try various sizes to make sure that the mechanics of what you're using are hitting you in the right place. These are meant for multiple people, thousands, millions of people to use. Not everybody's foot is the same. You've got to get the fit that works for you, and a lot of times just the simple size designation is not enough. Insole is lacking. However, with so much shoe, with so much midsole, I understand why the insole is really just a sock liner on many of these shoes. It's not meant to be an additional cushioning component in a lot of cases because the fit is so exact that any more padding would throw it off. I've tried that. You all know I love to swap in some Pebax midsoles, but it didn't fit in this. I tried it. The fit is pretty exact. I would liken it to a lot of the Nike Zoom stuff where the cut and the fit of the insole or the sock liner is really there just to line the shoe. Let's get into this big chunky midsole with the carbon fiber plate, okay? The obvious thing that you're going to see is when you first look at it, that painted piece there and the wrinkling. What else does that look like? Going back even as far as the originals, when you're talking about the Flyknit version of the Vaporfly, 4%, and that wrinkling that Zoom was getting, that was really throwing people off because it was painted. A lot of people didn't realize that the original color of that Zoom was actually a sort of a dingy yellow material, and they had to paint it to make it white. Well, that's very similar because it's a very similar material. Almost as if ASICS said, you know what, let's get into that silhouette that others have been using our technology, and let's bring it a little closer to the silhouette that people are buying. That's just my guess, but it feels drastically different visibly, and it feels very similar physically. Great cushion. There's a carbon fiber plate trapped between two layers. You can see the seam there. Okay, now that brings us to this. This right here is a visible indicator to tell you whether you've got the sky or the edge. Now there's others that show when we get to the outsole there's a difference. But right here, this component, this painted component here tells you this is the sky. This is giving a more flat profile to the plate inside, meaning that you are getting more vertical return and stiffness in that plate. I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I have seen pictures. The edge, that yellow component, is slanted forward and down a little more, telling you that the profile of that plate is a little more aggressive, pushing you forward. So, depending on your style of run, they are basically the same shoe with a slightly different angle on the plate based on your needs. As a heavier runner, I want vertical return also for my sprinting style. When I really get going and I really get aggressive in my tempo, I'm a more vertical runner when I put force down. I don't need help tilted forward and pushing off forward. I need energy return coming vertically. That's why I opted for this one, the Sky. Interesting. I like that there's a little visible self-selector, and it's really easy. It's in the design component, and you can tell quickly which one you have or which one you're selecting. That's really, really cool, and it's just a tiny little detail. So they are identical shoes with a slight plate difference, which brought them closer together than previous models that ASICS has out there. It runs very, very narrow. Okay. No rubber component here. The main rubber component runs toward the outside of the shoe right down there with a little bit of plug right there. Now, another difference from the Edge to the Sky. The Sky has this little cutout component here. Not really sure why. It can't be weight savings because it's just a little arrow of rubber there. And the Edge has black. So you quickly know that a Sky, you're running in a Sky when you've got a more flat profile on the yellow there showing the plate is flatter. And then you've got the pink matching the color versus the black. I think the black looks really cool. I wish they had put the black on this one. But I understand you got to self-select and show it very quickly to be the different shoe. The stability is fine in the forefoot. It's a little unstable for me in the heel. Wasn't a big fan of how that felt. I've had some narrower shoes that still worked out. But again, I don't know how unfair it would be of me to say that because someone was already in this shoe. Someone obviously was a bigger foot than mine. Someone probably leaned that shoe to the outside, making this right one a little unstable. The left one, not as much. So, take that as you will. For me, I'd still like to get myself into a fresh pair so that I can make that judgment call, and maybe I come back and I update you all and let you know what I think about that. Getting it on sale made it worth it. More than on sale, at the regular price, I don't know. I'm getting similar feel from shoes that don't cost this much, so I think when it comes to shoes like this, we are riding into that hype component. There's a lot of shoes in the market that are doing a great job that are not $250. That's a big chunk of money. I don't know that I would have gotten it had I not found them on sale. I've had a couple of friends that wore them, rave reviews about them, but I don't know that I could have done it. I like it. I don't love it. It felt like I couldn't get back out of it. It felt like I couldn't be quick. I felt like I had to stay at a methodical pace. Because of that, I would love to try the Edge. So ASICS, if you're watching, I'm not ashamed. I'm not above it. I'll make the plea directly to the camera. Or any of the vendors, Shields or anybody else. Send over a pair of the Edge and I'll give them a shot. As always, there'll be more of these when I can find the loot to do so. And I appreciate you all sticking with me as there is time between reviews. I completely understand that YouTube is this turn and burn and gotta have something up all the time. So that makes you all very important to me because you hang around while I'm doing regular life stuff in between grabbing pairs of shoes. So I appreciate you. I will see you in the next one. Peace.